On today's show, ESPN's top 25 under 25 for Houston Rockets made the list. Which guys should be higher or lower on ESPN's list? Plus, why Houston is the #1 trade destination in the NBA. And we take a look ahead at Rockets versus Warriors, the dress rehearsal before they take them on in the NBA Cup quarterfinals. It's all coming up on today's Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian and credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Thursdays. Be sure to follow along wherever you listen to your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Locked On Rockets, where the best way you can help us grow our show is to listen every single day on a podcast platform if you're choosing. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Drop us a comment while you're there. Just say Go Rockets. Helps us out a ton. Also, be sure to subscribe to our new daily Locked On Rockets newsletter. Would sincerely appreciate it. Now, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And as always, thanks so much for making Locked On Rockets part of your day every single day, whether it's on your way to work, on your lunch break, in the gym. Thank you so much for being one of our awesome everydayers. Got a handful of different topics we want to tackle on today's show. We'll take a look at the updated ESPN top 25 under 25 list with 4 Houston Rockets making the cut. Can you guess which Rockets player didn't make the cut this go around? Then we'll get into why Houston is the #1 trade destination in the NBA. Yes, even a better trade destination than the Oklahoma City Thunder. And last but certainly not least, we'll take a look ahead at the Rockets-Warriors matchup, the dress rehearsal before the Rockets take on the Warriors next week in the NBA Cup quarterfinals knockout round in order to try and advance to Vegas for the semifinals contest against the winner of the winner of the matchup between the OKC Thunder and Dallas Mavericks. So let's start with the ESPN top 25 under 25 list. Let me just work our way bottom to the top, I guess, for a second here. And then I'll share some thoughts. I want to focus on one guy in particular, but let's start with near the bottom of the list. Tari Eason clocks in at 24th. Amin Thompson clocks in at 22nd. Jalen Green clocks in at 20th. And then we skip a bunch of spots and we get to, drum roll, can you guess where Alperen Sengun clocks in at if you haven't read the list already? 10th on the list. So Alperen Sengun 10th on ESPN's top 25 under 25 list. And that's who I want to start with. And that's where I want to start this discussion. What more does Alperen Sengun need to do? What does he need to accomplish to push himself further up this list? You look at some of the names at the very tip top of this list currently. Victor Wembanyama, #1. Understandable. Anthony Edwards, #2. Not really any exception there. Paolo Banchero at #3. Now, he's only played 5 games this season. I feel like that should kind of disqualify him from any kind of update here. That's a ridiculously small sample size. He's been out for literally most of the season due to injury. Right behind him, his running mate, partner in crime, Franz Wagner, who's been playing out of his mind this season. So really, I take no issue there. And then Chet Holmgren clocks in at #5. Honestly, the top 5, pretty solid. I don't really have any issue with any of the top 5 guys there. I did make the argument going into the season that you could make an argument between, that you would take Alperen Sengun over Franz Wagner in a vacuum, but Franz has played out of his mind this season. He's played like an all-NBA caliber player so far this season, and Sengun's played incredibly well as well. The advanced stats favor him considerably, but Franz has shouldered a massive burden with the Orlando Magic team missing their best player, and yet they're 13-2 over the last 15 games. So Orlando hasn't faltered despite losing their best player. So you got to give credit where credit is due. It's these next handful of names on the list. Alperen Sengun, the guys in front of him from 6 through 9. Tyrese Halliburton at 6, Tyrese Maxey at 7, Evan Mobley at 8, and Jalen Williams from the OKC Thunder at #9. I wonder, what does Alperen Sengun need to do to move himself further up this list in the eyes of ESPN and the eyes of the guys writing this list, whether it's Tim Bontemps, whether it's Sean Marks, whether it's Kevin Pelton, like the guys who collaborate and work on these lists together. I'm curious what more Sengun needs to accomplish. J-Dub has had a fantastic season. He would probably be an all-star or headed for an all-star nomination if he wasn't in the super duper stacked Western Conference. So it's hard to really take exception there. But I do think some of this list is a little wonky in the sense that, like, Tyrese Halliburton has had such a down season. He has not played like one of the top 10 under 25 players so far this year. His numbers have been awful this season. He's shooting barely over 40% from the floor. His home versus road splits are atrocious. And I think this vote is more of a, I don't want to say recency bias vote because that's not the right terminology here, like a historical precedent vote. Like, people still think that Tyrese Halliburton is the Tyrese Halliburton of last season. So they voted for him, they put him there, and he clocked in at number 6 outside of the top 5 that we just listed off. And look, Tyrese Maxey, he's an all-star. He's played, he puts up numbers. He's averaging just under 26 points a game, 4.5 assists per contest. But the Sixers are also the second to last team in the Eastern Conference. This is a weak Eastern Conference. Yes, the 76ers don't have Joel Embiid. Yes, they don't have Paul George. Yes, those guys have missed a ton of games this season. Yes, they're missing other guys on top of that. But the fact that Tyrese Maxey can't elevate the 76ers past the Hornets or the Raptors or the Pistons in a very, very weak Eastern Conference, like, that should be damning enough to lower him a few spots on this top 25, under 25 list. I'm curious, in your eyes, what more does Alperen Sengun need to do? What more does he need to accomplish to elevate himself further on these lists, to elevate himself in the eyes of national media, national pundits, guys that write for ESPN, that kind of stuff? Aside from, and we've highlighted this already, his finishing this season has regressed considerably. Despite that, and then they even highlight that in their little blurb about him, he had said he had a breakout 2023-2024 campaign. Sengun hasn't scored efficiently to start the season, but he's playing the best defense of his career amid Houston's strong start. He's averaging a career-high 1.3 blocks and ranks in the NBA's top 10 with 10.7 rebounds per game, as the Rockets rank second in NBA defensive rating. So they identify his major weakness this season, the finishing around the rim, as well as his strengths, his growth. I just wonder, again, what more does Alperen Sengun need to do, aside from if he was just finishing better around the rim? Maybe it's just a point total thing, right? If Alp was averaging 21.5, 22.5, 23.5 points per game to go along with all the other metrics that he has, how much higher is he on this list? Is he ahead of J-Dub? Is he ahead of Evan Mobley at number 8? Is he ahead of the Tyreses at 7 and 6? What would he need to do to crack into that top 5 on this list ultimately? I really do want to see him turn it around and be able to start finishing around the rim, because if he can't do that, then yeah, he's not going to be able to crack the top of these lists and whatnot in the eyes of other national media. Now, I will say, for one thing here, the advanced metrics do favor Alperen Sengun considerably. He is 5th in the NBA, or tied for 5th in the NBA, in box plus minus. The only players ahead of him are Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and Steph Curry. Literally MVP caliber guys year in, year out are the only players ahead of Alperen Sengun in box plus minus so far this season. In VORP, value over replacement, there's only 5 guys ahead of Alp this season. Jokic, SGA, and Giannis again. And then there's also Franz Wagner and Jalen Williams, who are slightly ahead of, or actually, I guess it's a 3-way tie between those 3 guys. 4-way tie, actually, between Franz, J-Dub, Sengun, and Jason Tatum at 1.6 VORP this season. And then it's worth noting, J-Dub is also tied for Sengun in box plus minus at 7.6 as well. So J-Dub's had a strong season. So I don't really take exception to J-Dub being, at the same level as Alperen Sengun. But when you look at the advanced metrics, I don't think there's a world where Alp should be behind either of the Tyreses or Evan Mobley to start this season. When you look at the success so far that the Rockets have had, Alperen Sengun's role in said success, I would have J-Dub at 6th on this list probably, and then Alperen Sengun no lower than 7th based on his performance so far this season. Coming up, I do want to talk about the other three names really briefly on this ESPN Top 25 Under 25 list: Jalen Green, Tari Eason, and Amin Thompson, as well as getting into why Houston is the number one trade destination in the NBA, and we have to take a look ahead at Rockets v. Warriors. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by Chime. Look, we've all been there, spending more than we should during the holiday season. It's time to take control of your finances by using a Chime checking account with features like no monthly or maintenance fees, fee-free overdraft up to $200, or getting paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit. Learn more at chime.com/NBA. Join millions of Chime members who are working on their financial progress. To date, Chime has spotted members over $32 billion in transactions through SpotMe. Friends give friends a break. This is how it works. You set up a direct deposit in your Chime account. After qualifying direct deposits of $200 or more, Chime will notify you to enroll in SpotMe. With an activated debit card, Chime will spot you up to $200 on debit card purchases and cash withdrawals. Your next deposit is applied to your negative balance. Chime never charges overdraft fees for using SpotMe. Enjoy the holidays while keeping your financial goals on track with Chime. Open your account in 2 minutes at chime.com/NBA. That's chime.com/NBA. Chime feels like progress. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank N.A., Stride Bank N.A., members FDIC. SpotMe eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Direct deposit timing depends on submission of payment file. Boosts are available to eligible Chime members enrolled in SpotMe and are subject to monthly limits. Fees apply at out-of-network ATMs and for OTC withdrawals. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's tackle the other three Rockets here on the ESPN Top 25 Under 25 list. Surprisingly, no Jabari Smith Jr. on this list. And I think a big part of that was his struggles offensively to start the season. The woeful three-point shooting definitely held him back, although he's hit a nice little groove as of late and has been much more productive and impactful over this last handful of games. So not gonna really fault ESPN for leaving him off of this list. Jalen Green clocking at 20th here, and the blurb on him is more or less the same that it's been throughout the majority of his career. He can be highly impressive to watch on a good night, but his shot selection can be problematic. Sometimes the game looks exceptionally easy for him, but oftentimes he makes it more difficult for himself. Harnessing his talent to become a more efficient scorer and a balanced shot creator will be the key to Green reaching stardom. But in the middle of his fourth season, his tendencies are still holding him back. So, I mean, yeah, as far as Jalen goes, it's the consistency. We've talked about it time and time again, and I do see that, right? There's definitely times where just the decision-making, right, settling for the outside shots, settling for the perimeter shots, not trying to drive and get downhill, not putting pressure on the defense. It's the things we talk about constantly here at LOR. And, you know, it's good to at least know that, you know, guys like Jeremy Woo, who are, you know, premier draft analysts, guys who I have a lot of respect for in the draft world, are seeing some of those same kind of tendencies popping up with Jalen Green. Amin Thompson, 22, Tari Eason, 24. Glad the Terror Twins are getting some recognition for what they're doing so far this season defensively for this Rockets team. And it's funny that they've actually got the Terror Twins and sandwiched directly between them on this list, Dyson Daniels at 23. My goodness. If you could put those three guys on the court together, Amin Thompson, Dyson Daniels, Tari Eason, I don't know if anybody's scoring on that three-man lineup. That would be an absurd defensive trio to put out there. Look, the only thoughts I have on Tari and Amin is just keep up the amazing work. They've been so fantastic defensively this season, and it's nice to see them garnering some national media recognition for their production so far this year. And again, a little bit of a shame that Jabari didn't make the cut. But let's get into our next topic here. The Houston Rockets as a potential trade destination, the number one trade destination, at least via Tim Bontemps. Let's hear what he had to say about the Houston Rockets and why they're such an attractive market this season.
Being in Houston, a market guys have traditionally wanted to play in, big city, in Texas, no state taxes, got a coach that stars around the league really like, Ime Udoka. You've got a bunch of young talent where you could subtract some of it and still have a really good team whenever you bring a guy in, and you've got all these Suns picks and the Nets picks and other stuff. Like, they are the number one trade destination. And so anytime you hear anything about any star guy going, hey, is this guy going to be available in 6 months or a year or 18 months or whatever? The first team you should think about is Houston, because they have the ability to outbid everybody, and they don't have to give up all these guys. They can give up some of them, and still have a lot of them left over and immediately be a really good team with long runway because you have a bunch of young talent.
Great little blurb there from ESPN's Tim Bontemps about why the Houston Rockets are the number one trade destination in the NBA. Now, a lot of people, myself included at times, look at the OKC Thunder as maybe the number one team when it comes to having to rival, having to outbid as far as any potential transactions go. But I think there's a really strong point here that I guess I've thought about, like, at times, but haven't really, been forced to consider it. OKC has their young core kind of in place, right? But their big three of SGA, Chet Holmgren, and J-Dub, they're probably not going anywhere, right? OKC is going to build around those three guys, and then they've got a ton of young talent around them as well. Now, if they really want to go all in, if they want to, bring in an extra veteran piece or two or plug a hole, they've got more draft picks than God. They can do anything they want to do. And Sam Presti, has put on a masterclass in GMing to put OKC in that position to be able to pounce on any potential trade target, do whatever. But the uniqueness of it for the Houston Rockets is I don't think that the Rockets, even though all the messaging that we're hearing, everything that I've heard from, how this team is positioning themselves this season, they're listening to the offers, they're interested, they're paying attention. They've got guys on their radar, potential star players who may shake loose at this deadline or next summer. Absolutely. They're doing their job. But they're also being patient. They're also waiting to see how this core seven, of guys develop, which guys, maybe pop and turn into star level players. But at this point, the Rockets don't have a trio of established star guys that you're not going to want to get rid of. Now, later in the show, Brian Windhorst did highlight and share that, the messaging he's received, and that's consistent with what I've heard so far, is that Amin Thompson and Tari Eason are untouchable. They're not going anywhere. The Rockets are so incredibly high on those two guys. Amin Thompson has legit future superstar potential written all over him. You see the way that he impacts the game here in just the second year of his NBA career. Already possibly the best defender in the entire NBA. At least that's what Sam Vecenie believes, and I have a lot of respect for Sam Vecenie's opinion when it comes to evaluating talent. So, Amin Thompson, as much more work as he still has to put in on that outside shot, he has been putting in work there, right? We've seen him hit some consistent outside shots, some spot-up shots from the corner. And Tari Eason's just an absolute monster, right? He just makes things go. He is legitimately a starting caliber player right now, but he's being brought off the bench because it just works for what this Houston Rockets team has accomplished so far. There's not really a need to shake things up yet at this point. And Jabari, after a bit of a shooting slump, has come on nicely over these last few weeks. So that's been an encouraging sign, encouraging developments there for him. The Rockets have all this young talent, and they're not necessarily, there are a few guys on there. Alperen Sengun is clearly the best one of the bunch so far. But you can absolutely see a world where the Rockets could very easily package, a set of names, whether it's Jalen Green, Cam Whitmore, possibly Reed Shepherd. Maybe you do dip in a little bit. Maybe you go with a trade for Jabari to be able to get a true established star player, one that eventually shakes loose. And then you couple that with the fact that the Rockets do have a ton of draft capital, not quite as much as the OKC Thunder, but enough to be able to outbid everybody pretty much except for the Thunder. The only team out there that I think that has more draft capital and is in a potential position to match or exceed any offer that the Rockets would make for an established star player would be the San Antonio Spurs. The Spurs do have a healthy amount of draft capital themselves. They've got a young, exciting team. They've got, obviously, Victor Wembanyama, who's going to be dominant for the next 10, 15 years in the NBA. So the Spurs are also in a really advantageous position, but they don't have the market factor that the Rockets do. And Greg Popovich is, a little long in the tooth. Ime Udoka on the younger end of the coaching spectrum, and very much a guy that players connect with and want to play for, as Tim Bontemps already alluded to. So you factor all that together, and the Rockets, and credit to general manager Rafael Stone and the Rockets front office, they have absolutely positioned themselves to be exactly where you want to be as a young team, right? They've experienced a ton of success to start the season. They're on pace to finish with possibly home court advantage later this postseason, which is well beyond any level of expectations that I think, I realistically set for this Rockets team coming into this year. And you're doing that without even necessarily having a true 1A superstar on the team. Now, I don't want Sengun stands to take exception to that. Sengun has been phenomenal, right? He's clearly the Rockets' best player. But is he truly a 1A type superstar? He's not quite there yet. He's blossoming. He's getting there. If he was finishing at the same rate that he was last season and his efficiency was better this year, then I would make that argument, right? I'd make that argument that he's like a top 5 MVP caliber player and that he, deserves all the recognition in the world and that he should be, firmly cemented onto an all-star team this season, all those things. The finishing has to get a little bit better. But aside from that, he has still had a really, really phenomenal season. I think the Rockets are just in an incredible spot right now. And there's so many different names across the NBA landscape that you look at that the Rockets could potentially be in play for down the line. Now, what's important for the Rockets is they need to be able to find somebody if they ultimately decide that they want to make an all-in move or a big trade, a big splashy move. They need to be able to find somebody that complements the timeline of their pre-existing young core. I don't want to see the Rockets trading for some over-the-hill star. There's no need for them to trade for Jimmy Butler or Kevin Durant or any of those types of names. I also have zero interest in Zion Williamson. The dude can't stay healthy to save his life. But again, there are names out there like, a De'Aaron Fox, like a Devin Booker, guys like that you can very easily look at and see their situations and see how the Suns, this season have struggled. They've struggled due to injuries. They've, ping-ponged up and down the standings in the West a little bit, currently sitting at 12-8 at the time of this recording. The Kings, despite just getting a win against the Rockets, who didn't play their best game and really struggled with the refs, the Kings sitting at 10-12, not even in the playoff picture this season, and a lot of question marks about De'Aaron Fox's future there in Sacramento. And here's the kicker. Not only do the Rockets have a swath of young talent, different names that they could package in a potential deal, they've also got a ton of draft capital. They also have $40.8 million in expiring salary that they can aggregate, put together, and trade if they wanted to at this trade deadline to be able to get a star caliber player back if they wanted to make a significant splashy move mid-season. That's if you put together the contracts of Steven Adams, Jock Landale, Jeff Green, Jayshawn Tate, and Aaron Holiday. That gets you up to $40.8 million in expiring or non-guaranteed money that the Rockets could just confetti cannon at the next available star player, if one does become available, that they would want to pick up this season. Now, it's a little bit harder to make a trade like that work mid-season because then the receiving team has to either also include a bunch of smaller, non-guaranteed contracts or smaller scale salaries to be able to offset the, 5-for-1 player trade, whatever. But we've seen NBA GMs get incredibly creative with how they make space, how they open up roster spots to be able to make a deal like this happen. And if the Rockets ultimately decided, hey, there's a guy who's on the trade block this deadline, we think he can put us over the hump this season, and they can make a play to get him without giving up any of their true core rotation guys. I'm not counting Steven Adams and Jock Landale as core rotation guys because they've been so underwhelming so far this season. That's absolutely a move that the Rockets front office should look at making. So the Rockets are in a phenomenal position to make a move. Ultimately, at this point, it's just what will that move be? Which guys are the targets? And again, smart money says there's probably not going to be a move mid-season, but the Rockets are still in a fantastic position to make a big play for something this upcoming offseason. Coming up, want to get into a quick preview of Rockets Warriors, the dress rehearsal before the Rockets take on the Warriors in NBA Cup quarterfinals action next week. We're going to get there in just one moment. First, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5, just $5, and get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one spot. So if you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you live play-by-play, and so much more on the exact same page where you actually place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. And while you're there, take a look at all the different odds available. Check out their parlay builder. Check out the different season awards winners, conference awards, division leaders, all this different stuff. Or just check out the outright favorites to win this year's Super Bowl. Right now, the Detroit Lions plus 290 to win it all. The Eagles and Bills both sitting at plus 500. Right behind them, the Chiefs plus 550. And rounding out the top five, the Baltimore Ravens, far off number 5 at plus 1,000. So for all those odds and so much more, head on over to FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast, home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. All right, let's do a quick preview of this Rockets-Warriors game. So the Rockets and Warriors have already played once this season. A quick refresher in their last meetup earlier. Well, I can't say earlier in the month. Sorry, I still think it's November for some reason. Early in the month of November, the Rockets had the game where they were getting absolutely blown out by the Warriors. Golden State led by as many as 31, and then the Rockets clawed back in to force OT thanks to the trio of Jabari Smith Jr., Tari Eason, and Amin Thompson, who had combined for, I believe it was 31 of 35 points scored in that, or 35 of 39 points or something ridiculous, scored in that fourth and final quarter to mount the comeback to force overtime. Rockets ultimately lost that game 127-121. Now, for the Golden State Warriors, they had no Steph Curry in that game. So this was not even the Warriors at full strength. They also didn't have De'Anthony Melton, who is now sidelined permanently this season as he had season-ending ACL surgery. And the Golden State Warriors, yet again, will not be full strength in this meetup. So it kind of sucks because it's not really like a full dress rehearsal against the Warriors. But on the Warriors side, they're missing Steph Curry. Already mentioned De'Anthony Melton's season is done for. Draymond Green is also out. And then Andrew Wiggins is questionable with right ankle impingement. Steph Curry sitting out for knee maintenance, and Draymond Green has left calf tightness. Now for the Rockets, Tari Eason is also out. He's apparently in concussion protocol. I don't know when or where Tari Eason hit his head last game against the Sacramento Kings. I didn't notice a fall or an incident. And my first thought when I saw that he was in concussion protocol, I was like, man, that Kings fan had hands. Maybe he did actually make it all the way into the stands. I kid. But so Tari Eason not playing in this game. And then Fred VanVleet, questionable with a right knee contusion. If Fred is out and if Tari is out, the Rockets get really thin really quickly. Now, given the fact that the Warriors are missing so many of their key guys, right? Literally, Warriors missing Steph and Draymond is going to be not a cakewalk of a team to beat, but those are literally the two guys that are the Warriors' like entire identity, right? Draymond can still run the offense and do what Golden State likes to do without Steph Curry. They've got other shooters. They've got other guys that can make shots and can, run the actions, but nobody on that Warriors team can do what Draymond Green does if he's not in the game. So him not being a part of this matchup, that's good stuff. That's great news for the Rockets. I'd rather rest Fred, though. I'd rather him not be beleaguered or, pushing himself too hard on a knee that is bothering him. Again, he had that fall where there was he stayed on the ground for an extended period of time, and there was that, I forget if it was knee-to-knee contact or something, but he laid on the ground and he came up and he was hobbling back to the bench at one point last game. So hopefully nothing too serious there. But again, if you're missing Tari, if you're missing Fred, Rockets starting lineup becomes Amin Thompson, Jalen Green, Dillon Brooks, Jabari Smith Jr., and Alperen Sengun. And then the bench gets really thin after that. Now, the benefit here is that the Rockets do have a lot of depth pieces that have not been in the rotation consistently this season. So if Tari misses time, if Tari misses time, if Fred misses the game, then I fully expect that we would see some Jeff Green minutes, definitely some Aaron Holiday minutes to kind of offset the loss there in the rotation. There won't be any Cam Whitmore minutes. He's still on assignment with the RGV Vipers down in the G League. And then on the Warriors side of things, their projected starting lineup, without Steph, without Draymond, and assuming Andrew Wiggins, who is questionable, does actually ultimately play, they'll probably start Lindy Waters III, Brandon Pajemski, Wiggins, Jonathan Kuminga, and then Kevon Looney at the 5 spot. As far as this matchup is ultimately concerned, the Rockets really struggled last game guarding a lot of the Warriors' split cut actions. A lot of it boils down to some miscommunications, some moments where the Rockets were indecisive on their switching. And ultimately, for this Rockets team to be effective, right, they have to, it starts first and foremost with their defense. And credit to the Golden State Warriors system, credit to their head coach and Steve Kerr. They've installed a system where guys are able to come in and flourish where they haven't been able to flourish in other places. Buddy Hield looks like he's playing like prime Klay Thompson in this current Warriors system. And against the Rockets, he had 27 points off the bench. Buddy Hield and Jonathan Kuminga combined for 50 points. Again, Hield had 27, Kuminga had 23 off the Warriors bench in their first meetup between these two teams. And Buddy Hield got incredibly hot from three. The Rockets were not disciplined on the defensive side. They were losing. They were mixing up assignments. They weren't sticking to the one or two guys that you have to pay attention to on the perimeter against this Warriors team. Now, again, no Steph Curry in this game. So he's normally when he's out there, right? That's the one guy you cannot lose track of. With no Steph Curry in this game, the Rockets have to do a much better job of paying attention to Buddy Hield wherever he is. You can't let Buddy Hield get going. The moment he sees one or two threes go down, all he needs is a little bit of separation coming off a screen or a dribble handoff or anything like that. He's a motion shooter. He's a movement shooter. He's an elite catch and shoot player. I need to see the Rockets glued to him. And I need to see, honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing Ime Thompson being the primary on Buddy Hield. I know Ime Thompson is such an elite on-ball defender that you might want to use him to slow down somebody like Andrew Wiggins or Jonathan Kuminga, or again, if he were playing, then obviously you'd want to put Ime Thompson on Steph Curry, try to use his length to bother him, on the perimeter. But just based on how badly he scorched the Rockets last game, I need to see the Rockets find a way to shut down Buddy Hield. And a big part of that is just doing a better job fighting over screens, making sure that you have a hand up when you're fighting over so that you don't give up a clear, wide open, like line drive shot from the perimeter. On the other side of things, the reason last game was so ugly was Alperen Sengun and Jalen Green both had two of their, arguably worst performances of the season. Sengun was just finished with just 14 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists, kind of a pedestrian game for him, given how much we expect out of him on a nightly basis. That was, really kind of a quiet, bad game for Alp by his usual standards. And then Jalen Green in this game was just 7 points, or last meetup, I shouldn't say this game, last meetup, just 7 points on 2 of 13 shooting. And Fred VanVleet also struggled in this last meetup, 11 points, 2 of 12 shooting. So the Rockets backcourt struggled mightily. The Warriors got 50 some odd points between two players off of their bench. The Rockets were able to offset that a little bit by the production, from the production of Amen Thompson and Tari Eason, and then Jabari Smith Jr. had a really big game. Ultimately, this should be a Rockets win. Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If the Warriors are missing Steph and Draymond, then this should feel like a tune-up game for the Rockets. It should present an opportunity for them to get back on their feet and get back to playing their brand of Rockets basketball, matching their defensive intensity and identity that they've built for themselves this whole season. And at the same time, the Rockets have not lost back-to-back games at any point so far this season. So there should be a lot of optimism and, I guess, hope, whatever, just optimism, whatever, that the Rockets are going to be able to kind of right the ship, get back to doing what they do best, against this Warriors team after kind of a really disheartening performance against the Sacramento Kings, or an uninspired performance against the Sacramento Kings. And this is the third game of their little West Coast swing, so they'll wrap things up later this weekend on Sunday night with a game against the LA Clippers. And look, it's always great when you beat the Warriors, and it's time for the Rockets to be able to kind of expel some of their demons dealing with this Warriors team. They have, I need you to brace yourself, maybe sit down if you're standing before you hear this. The Rockets have lost 15 straight games to the Warriors. That's an unbelievable metric. I'm so sick and tired of the Warriors, man. Like, I want this win so badly. And in a weird way, though, I'm kind of like, man, if the Rockets lost this game, but then they broke the streak in the cup game, that would kind of be cooler. But no, just break the streak one game early, go out there, take care of business against a Warriors team that is clearly not at full strength, and then get a decent look at certain guys, fill out the scouting report, take extensive notes on which matchups are favorable, which guys you can take advantage of, who has certain weaknesses out there on the court, and then be ready and prepared for the game next week in the NBA Cup quarterfinals. That's the kind of benefit here too about this little bit of a dress rehearsal. Even though the Warriors aren't going to be at full strength, it does give the Rockets coaching staff and players a chance to kind of refamiliarize themselves with this Warriors team, with certain matchups, guys that they can take advantage of, and how they're going to execute certain actions, how they're going to guard certain plays that the Warriors like to run. And it's a nice little preview ahead of the NBA Cup quarterfinals matchup next week. So it should be a win. On paper, it looks like the win. It'll be a little bit harder if the Rockets don't have Fred and Tari Eason in this game, but Fred VanVleet and Tari Eason do not equal Steph Curry and Draymond Green, so the Rockets on paper should still be the better team between these two. Can't let Maple Jordan have a big night, though, and Andrew Wiggins has definitely had some big games in the past against the Houston Rockets. On that note, I'm curious, your expectations for Rockets Warriors. What are you hoping to see out of this matchup? How do you feel about the ESPN top 25, under 25 list, and what do you think about the Rockets as the #1 trade destination in the NBA this season? Give me all your thoughts in the YouTube comments, but as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Remember, the best way you can help us grow our show, listen every single day on a podcast platform you're choosing, like and subscribe on YouTube, drop a comment, subscribe to the newsletter. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. And we look forward to having you back right here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.